Apologies for the cars. A bit busy here today. I'm at the War Memorial for the village of Llandrillo here in North Wales. I've been here lots of times, many times. I pass here quite regularly, but I've had to come today in response to some absolutely bizarre claims made by self-styled UFO investigator stroke researcher Russ Kellett. The reason I've come out today, and I'll be repeating myself several times because I've got to cover some ground today. Later I'll be up there about a good mile and a half away. The reason I won't make any apologies for repeating myself because it's actually quite important, but the reason I'm here today is simply because Russ Kellett has recently produced a ebook published on Amazon, and he's changed his story yet again about this idea of a crashed UFO. As I say, I'll be repeating this on and off during my excursion today. So I've come out today to film this actual location to show how A, he's changed the story, but also B, that that's a premeditated act. He knows what he's done and he's deliberately changed the story. Something he's done since the year 2000, best part 20 years ago. He took it upon himself in about 1999 to believe a disinformation campaign, a hoax created by a guy called John Williams, who we also came to know as J.W. Conway. Cut a long story short, this guy J.W. tried to feed Margaret Fry a load of disinformation about a crash scenario. We know now that the effort was to get her to accept this, hook, line and sinker, disseminate it into the UFO community, and then pull the rug from under her to discredit her, as she was the leading researcher at the time in the 1990s on the Berwyn UFO. Essentially the story that she was given changed when Russ Kellett took her on. They modified the stories to suit him, and they moved a roadside crash from Llandrillo 3 miles that way to this field over here. And I'm going to walk just over here a little bit, because as you can see, as I approach the roadside stones here, you can see that the field behind is bordered by the river here, which covers about 90% of the length of the field. And you've got the bridge there, and I'm going to go down the road a little bit here to try and get a side view of that bridge. But essentially this river runs along 90% of the length of the field, and it's bordered by the old railway track over there, which was there in 1974. And I don't have to go too much further. I'm rambling on a bit because I don't like to edit this stuff. I want everyone to see what it is as it happens, as it were. So I'll get to this open spot here now. This should do. This water regularly floods, by the way, in bad weather. If I look down there, if you see all that debris in the trees, in the bushes there, that's floodwater debris carried down. And this road is frequently blocked by floodwater. So there's the bridge there. A little bit further. Now recently a tree came down in some bad weather. That's that big tree there, but just behind it is a wall there. It's about 10 feet high, drops down into the field, and beyond it you can see that slope comes down there. It is quite steep. It's a very narrow turning into the field. So in the original story, which moved from Llandrillo, the UFO was discovered by 5 men coming from Bala in this field. And in one version that was related by Russ, the men entered the field and were then confronted by arriving military personnel. In another version, they saw the flying saucer in the field, the UFO crashed, and the military were already there. The problem with the story is that the river's here, yet in one version they say they entered the field. Well, they couldn't have entered it from here, and unless they dropped down a 10-foot wall over there into the field, they never entered there either. Also, a flatbed truck entered the field and came down that steep slope through a gap in the wall accessing the road over there, which a tractor can barely get through. But a flatbed came down that slope, put a presumably quite heavy damaged flying saucer on the back, which would have been clearly a lot wider than the flatbed truck if 5 aliens were inside it, and it was covered with a tarpaulin and something, and exited the field. Quite impossible. So I'm just going to walk back to the war memorial, because about at least going back as far as 2006, maybe a bit more, Russ produced a DVD called Dragon Lights. It was actually made in 2 halves which were fused together, and in it he describes the UFO crashing in this field. And the reason I'm starting at the war memorial here is because he stands on that war memorial there in the Dragon Lights film, points at the field here and says that's where the UFO crashed, and with some clever camera trickery, because he must have known then, they angled the camera so this river was excluded, and the bridge was excluded as well, because as soon as anyone saw that clip they would have realised, if they had half a brain cell, that in fact the access to this field was well nigh impossible, as described by the book, by the DVD. Also, because the leaves are off the trees now, got that farm there, I think maybe now Bryn Bougan or Bryn Uanan or something, I remember that, and behind that is the lodge house, or one of the lodge houses for Pally Hall over there. It's pronounced Pally Hall, but it is actually, if you're being posh, Palais Hall. But I say, there's the railway. That was decommissioned about 1971, and the track was gone by 1974. But this field here is frequently underwater in the winter months, and as I just pointed out, to that debris in the trees there, that would have flooded the road here and would have breached the top of that bank. The field's extremely wet as well, but somehow a truck just managed to get in there. So it was impossible for whatever Russ claimed to have happened. So what he did was, to keep the story going, and this is just pure deceiving, in his DVD he made, he stands here and with the camera angle they used, I'm going to turn that there now, Russ is here pointing to the field there, and the angle was such in this Dragon Lights film that you couldn't actually see the River Dee. He'd done it in such a way that that field there looked like it comes to the side of the road just behind those stones. But irrespective of that, there is no dispute that Russ Kellett was saying the UFO was in that field, and he maintained that for years. However, when he suddenly realised that it was impossible, he changed the venue for the purpose of his latest book. And his latest book moves the UFO from that field to this one, straight across the road. And he's now trying to say that the UFO was taken out of this small field here and nobody noticed. We've got the B4401 here coming from Llandrillo to meet the road near Bala, and you've got the B4402 coming through the village there. Here it breaks here, goes around the back of the Bryn pub over there past Palais Hall, and that goes up to meet the road over the Berwyns, the B4391, which is the road Pat Evans was on when she discovered the Berwyn UFO. I've measured the distance just behind the traffic light there to here. There's the memorial. It's 45 yards. So on the night of the 23rd of January, first of all, he tried to claim that a UFO was recovered from that field over there and nobody noticed. The village pub's up there. There was loads of people walking backwards and forwards. Yet he claims there was roadblocks, all sorts of things. Or a single roadblock rather. That's another point of contention. And he's moved us to this field. Now if I zoom in there, you can see a wooden fence there. That's actually the reverse side now of an image on the front cover of his book. He's actually stood there and he's got a superimposed mock-up of a flying saucer and the aliens in this field here. The middle section of that field, see where that sheep is, where are we? It's lone sheep on his own. Yeah, that one there. So that's the middle of the field. It's 230 yards to the first house over there, which is a chapel building actually. It couldn't be any more ludicrous. So I'm going to poke about today and get a bit more information about some of the claims he's made, because they're just totally bizarre, and I'll be putting them together. Right, that property there is part of the chapel behind. There's the chapel there, and that's the nearest building in Llandrillo on the approach road in. There's the approach road out, and there's the war memorial there. Very significant in this whole escapade. But the reason I'm stood here, I'll just get rid of this car. So we're filming on the side of a road. There's cars. I like the way they look at you, dead strange, like, why is that guy on the side of the road filming? Anyway, I'm stood here because I'm looking at this piece of fence here. Now, it just looks like a piece of fence, but it's actually very, very significant, because this piece of fence appears on the front cover of Russ Kellett's latest book, inverted commas, and there's a mock-up of a flying saucer in the grass field here behind where these sheep are. And the farce of all this is that I'll just zoom in on the bridge there. There's the bridge at Bonfawr, and behind it is the field where the Llandrillo UFO crashed, and that's the field where he talks about in the DVD he made, Dragon Lights. However, he's clearly realised that it's now untenable, even though he's plugged it for 20 years. But of course he can't escape the story that the flying saucer was recovered from the side of a road, because it was discovered on a car journey, by five men on the way home from Bala. So that's a bit of glue, really. You can't escape that. It just can't be done. So that's why the story never changed when it was moved from Llandrillo. It was a roadside crash and recovery. So another car. I know times have changed, but yeah, there's a lot more traffic on the road. But there's a lot more traffic on the road. But this road, this is the B4401, which runs from over the main road from Bala over this way to the B4391 that goes over the Berwyns. Pat Evans came down this road. Pat Evans lives over there in this village. She's the nurse who discovered the Berwyn UFO, and we know what time she even came up and down this road. Yet despite that, she failed to notice, coming down and on a return, that in this field, and a now revised field, but also the field beyond there, was a UFO recovery operation. No one saw a thing, no one heard a thing. But as I say, the five men in the original story eventually discovered a UFO recovery operation in Llandrillo, right up the valley that way. When Margaret Fry wouldn't take the bait, and Russ Kellett decided he would, the story was changed for him, and it was moved to the field over there. In fact, John Williams, J.W. Conway, showed him where this field was, and told him that's where the crash recovery took place from. However, there was a problem, because when Russ Kellett obviously had a closer look at the field, he did realise, best part of 20 years ago, we're going back about 2005, 15, about 15, 16 years ago, that there was issues, because depending on which version of the story he actually related, because he's changed the story so many times. The guys coming from Bala saw the UFO in the field. In another version they saw it coming down and crashing into the field. In another version the military were already there and turned them away. In another version there was a roadblock. In another version they climbed into the field and then saw the military turned up then and chased them away. It's unbelievable the number of times he's changed the story. It's all documented, so he can't retract any of that, although he is trying to erase it with this latest new version. On that war memorial there, as I say, he stood there and said he was pointing at the field where the UFO crashed. In fact, what they did was some clever camera trickery, was they made sure that the bridge parapet over there was missing out the footage. It wasn't in view because it's a 10-foot drop. In fact, it's just convenient where we are today. There's the bridge, that white van there. There's a guy fixing the bridge because a lorry went smashed the parapet down the other week, and it's in the process of being fixed. There's traffic lights on there. That's why that guy on the quad bike there has stopped at the lights there. Yeah, they used a camera angle to do away with the drop into the field. They also used a camera angle to make it look like the field came straight up to the side of the road. In fact, between the road and the field was the River Dee, but they actually erased that by just angling the camera a bit differently. So we got Russ Kellett stood on that war memorial, pointing at the field, saying that's the field the flying saucer crashed into, the UFO or whatever. Anyway, he's clearly now realised that's not possible. But of course he can't change the story about the five men discovering the flying saucer. I'll call it a flying saucer. UFO on the side of the road. So he's actually moved it now from that field over there to this field. And this fence here, back here, he's actually used it on the cover of the book. And inside the book he says the UFO crashed in this field. But he's also made another fundamental error, because if I zoom in there, there's a footpath starts there, and the footpath runs along this hedge here, just behind these sheep, goes across the fields. He clearly hasn't realised that's the case. And to claim that the men actually photographed what was going on after they were chased away, he says in his new book they went round the back of the D. Well, that means they're over the other side of the river. And there was actually no need for them to be there, because if he realised there was a footpath, he could have just said that. But that's not the case. He hasn't done his research there. Right, Dave. That's alright. It's alright. Yeah. Yeah. Blew in there with that. Yeah, good one, yeah. Yeah.
Was that smoke then?
Yeah, on the track down.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh, I must have been that.
Yeah, it just started coming down. It was a few flurries, and then when I got to the top of the track, it well came down.
Oh, yeah.
It was nice. Didn't stick, of course. Yeah. So yeah, it was all right. But I'm going there tomorrow.
Are you?
Yeah.
So I'm working dogs tomorrow.
Yeah. Exciting.
Huh?
Exciting.
Machines and all that, innit?
Alright. See you later. Sorry about that, ladies and gents. It's a mate of mine, a bus driver. Yeah, so Russ has made this fundamental error of claiming this field is now the size of the UFO. So we got the other issue is, how did a flatbed truck park on this road and acquire a flying saucer on its back? And in the version in the field beyond here, beyond where that car is now, he claims the flatbed truck was actually in the field. Again, that was impossible, and he's realised that. So he's changed the story again, that the flatbed truck is on the roadside. Now it could be this roadside, but of course if the 5 men were coming from that direction, why would they necessarily see anything up here? Because they were going to take the route over the bridge. That's the route towards Llandrillo. And where that car's now stopped there with the lights again, there's 45 yards from the end of this road where the memorial is to where the road turns, where the car's just gone over the bridge now. So the only other place this flatbed truck could have parked was on that 45-yard stretch, which would have blocked pretty much the entire road. So he hasn't thought this through. So he's going to have to account for this. My mate's just come back down the village. The bus comes up here, turns around in the village and comes back down. He's heading towards Barmouth now. Yeah, so Russ clearly hasn't done his own work. He hasn't realised there was a public footpath along there, which was there in 1974. And because he didn't know that, he's made the ludicrous claim that the men actually went round the back of the river, when they could have just gone along that hedge line there. Of course, as well, in the other version he had, pertains to that field over there, when they were chased away, he reckons one of them in 1974 had a camera that was so good that they went to an elevated position and then were able to photograph such detail as what these aliens were wearing, insignia, what looked like sidearms, all this sort of business. Well, again, what he didn't realise, of course, is this whole site here, the reason these fields are flat is because they're on the River Dee floodplain, and this road is frequently blocked. the field he claimed the flying saucer was in was frequently flooded, and there's even flood tunnels on the bridge parapet to allow excess water to come off that field. In January that field is often underwater if it rains heavy enough, but he just didn't take that into account. So ladies and gents, have a good look. There's a kiddies playground there now, because on the 23rd of January 1974, for about the umpteenth version, the military recovered a crashed flying saucer here that was shot down, having been hit by a missile somewhere near Capel apparently. And also the original one UFO, that was the Berwyn UFO, has now morphed into X number of UFOs, and even more. Several of them hiding in lakes, local lakes. He's even claimed there's one in Llandrillo now. He hasn't realised there's a nuclear power station there, mind. Had he saw that, he'd have been thinking they were attacking a nuclear power station. But he's got it marked on a map. That also isn't a map. He does explain why it's not the same map, but the reason he's given is just totally ludicrous. Some thing about copyright, but of course he has used a map before, and all the newspapers have published copies of that same map as well, where they've run a story. Now all of a sudden, not to show that map, which of course has got damning information on it about previous versions, he's hid the map and claimed it's copyright breach if he publishes it, and then he's redrawn the map on another one and is using that. So he's just deceived the public all the time. He's changed the story multiple times. So anyway, ladies and gents, that's pretty much it. Make of it what you will. I will just go back here now. I'll just walk along that footpath a little bit and take a view of this fence spot from over there behind the sheep. Before I do, this field has got a public footpath along the back of it there. Russ clearly hasn't noticed this on any maps, because to keep the idea going that the 5 men who discovered the crashed UFO took photographs. He claims in his book that after they were chased by the military, they went round the back of the D. Well, of course they couldn't go around the back of the D unless they went over that bridge, and they went on the other side of the river. That's the back of the D, because he hasn't realised there's actually a public footpath here. And had he realised, I doubt very much he'd have actually written that. But the public footpath was here in 1974, and I'll just go over to it now. I'll walk along a little bit. The angle has come down here now and parked the cars in this little bit here. So I'll give it a bit of a guided tour, as it were. There's the downstream side of Llandrillo Bridge. You can look across the river there and see on the wall on this side of the road. It's about 10-foot drop into the down to the bank. It's the same on the other side. We'll have a look at that in a minute. Again, there's a quick pan around the field. Russ claims a UFO. Sometimes it's a saucer, sometimes it's a cylinder. It was recovered from this field now, not the one behind me. And nobody noticed. No one saw the thing. But as I say, one of the most damning things is that Pat Evans, who was credited with discovering the Berwyn UFO up on the mid-slopes of Berwyn Mountain, came up and down this road. At the times he claims there was a UFO recovery operation in place. Right, So this is the stile into the field. So the actual footpath goes across the field. There it is. It goes where those sheep are there, over the next stile and over the next stile. I'll zoom in on that. There's one stile, another one beyond it. This field is probably no more than, let's see, there's the, I have measured this, I'm trying to remember it off the top of my head now. I'll give the measurements more accurate later on. But there's the back of the fence that appears in his front cover. That's no more than 200 yards along there, and it's about 40-50 yards from where I'm stood now to the road. And then there's about well, I have measured that. I know it's a 45 yard length of road between the top of this track and the lane there, the road up into Llandrillo village. Yeah, he's claiming that a UFO recovery operation took place. This field is no more than 1.5 acres. There was another reason he chose this field as well, because there's power lines across the other one. I'd previously mentioned those in one of my condemnations of his claims of upholding the hoax. The chances of a UFO crashing into the field over there and not taking down a power line was very, very small indeed. But again, many times I presume he looked at that field and he just didn't twig how ludicrous and impossible it was, the claim. But instead of like thinking to himself, well, you know, this is impossible, he never considered that it actually might be a hoax, which what it was. It is what it is. He just invented stuff to plug the gaps. And as I say, today I've come here now. As I say, I'm going to end up there later. I've come here now to bust some more of his rubbish. I've got better things to be doing on a day like this, but deceiving the readers and the UFO community like this and upholding a hoax that was deliberately fed to someone to try and undermine her and discredit her, it's just appalling. So onwards and upwards. Right, I'm on the Llandrillo bridge now. Proper name for it is a Bontmawr medieval bridge, listed. But as you can see, there's nowhere for any vehicles to park here. And you can, there's the war memorial there, and you can get an idea of the width of the river here. Good 50 yards across, and things were made to look like that grass field there actually went to the edge of the road there, when it was realised that 90% of this UFO crash field there was surrounded by water. You can see there's power lines in the field there. They were there in '74. That massive tree in the middle of the field there. Yet somehow, on the railway embankment over there, yet this UFO crashed here after being hit by a missile. Seemingly hit by a missile from a jet, which wasn't actually even in service for several years later. That's another flaw in the story. And it managed to enter this field without hitting a tree, hitting a power line, nothing. Totally ludicrous. Also, if I look down here now, you can see there it's is about 8 feet down. And this drop into the field, a bit more there, and also, where are we? Yeah, not a bit further up yet. As I say, this field often floods, and you can see the tunnels over there. Actually, we'll get to those. There to allow excess flood water off this field. So that tree came down in a gale. Well, as you can see, the river covers most of this field. This high wall covers the rest of the field. Yet, in one of Russ Kellett's earlier versions, there's the flood water tunnels there. They drain the field when it floods. Yeah, in one of the earlier versions. The men apparently just entered this field. They just walked into it. No mention of the wall, no mention of the river. And when he realised that was a problem, they simply, when they filmed it, covered it up, denied the existence of the wall by not filming it, and angled the camera to exclude the river. No mention of the railway embankment either, or the farm up there. It's all rather quite bizarre. As I say, now that's being rumbled, he's moved the UFO to that field, even smaller than this one, and has actually claimed that the men who discovered the UFO recovery operation went round the back of the D to take their photographs. Brilliant cameras in 1974, night vision on them and everything. You can see insignia and sidearms on alien entities from hundreds of yards away in the pitch black. But of course he says they came around the back of the River Dee to take the photographs this time. Well, there is no back of the River Dee unless you come over this bridge round here, and then you are down here. So the river's in the way then. That field there is not the UFO field, it's behind the trees over there. So how does he work that one out? He's just made it up as he goes along to try and plug the gaps. Every time a floor is exposed, he doesn't think, actually there's a problem with this. Maybe the information's wrong. No, the information's always right. And he meant something to plug the gap. Shocking. But there it is, folks. There's the evidence for yourself. Everything I'll show today will show how he's being deceptive and how stuff simply cannot be. That drainage ditch there is marked on very, very old maps, and it carries wastewater off the field and through one of those tunnels there, which are also used for taking flood water off this field. It's frequently underwater, especially in January and February. You can tell the power of this water because these tree trunks here are being carried down the river when there's been a flood on, and they've jammed up against the parapet wall. There's some more there. And that slope, a lorry came down there with no one in the house behind, noticing a thing. It managed to go up a track over there, do a 90-degree turn through a gate there, barely big enough for a car, and it was always like that. You can tell from the dry stone wall gate. And then it went down that very steep slope there into the field. And a UFO was recovered along with prisoners. Of course, some of the original disinformation that was passed out long before Russ Kellett came on the scene was that dead aliens were recovered from the Berwyn UFO crash and were taken to port and down. It's all rubbish, all disinformation. I mean, one of the things Russ Kellett claims is that aliens recovered from here spent the night in a place called Chester Barracks. Well, he should have checked out Chester Barracks, because in 1974 it was the county lunatic asylum. It was a Ministry of Defence building, but it was leased out for years, and it wasn't reoccupied by the military, but then only as an officers' mess in the 80s. Yet on the 23rd of January 1974, he claims that aliens recovered from this field, not the field in Llandrillo where he'd moved it from, to this field to suit Russ. And they took them to Chester Barracks and then on to some forward destination. Absolutely bizarre. Just behind that gate up there is the 90-degree bend into the river, into the field here. So the track in is behind that dry stone wall there, and behind that gate is another little bridge over the railway cutting, which goes into that farm there. And that bridge was there as well in 1974. It was always there from the time they built the railway. Yet strangely, 50 yards away, the house, and no one noticed a lorry going through their property, through a gate which was impossible to navigate and negotiate, go into that field, recover a flying saucer and go out the same way. No one coming to and from this road to the pub just round the bend up here, the Brinterion. No one noticed anything. Cars coming to and fro, no one saw a thing. And if you imagine it, if you wanted to recover a flying saucer out of that field there, or even the field over there, you've got the road there from coming from Bala, you've got the road up into Llandrillo village there, you've got this road coming over the bridge, and it goes past the Brinterion pub round the bend, and then carries on to Llandrillo that way. But there's also another junction there which takes the road past Pala Hall. So if you wanted to conduct an operation here, you would need a roadblock on the road down there, you need one over there, and you need one on the road there, and you need one on the road there. You must have 5 roadblocks just to give yourself a working area here, so people don't see anything. Yet in the original information given to Margaret Fry and Russ Kellett, there was a roadblock, a single roadblock. You wouldn't put a roadblock right next to where you were going to conduct a top secret UFO recovery operation. You wouldn't want anyone to see it. You'd only be stopping people at a roadblock right next to where the problem was. You'd exclude them from the area. But seemingly that was lost on Russ, because Margaret Fry spotted it. She realised, what's the point of one roadblock? And this is one of the things that made her suspicious about John Williams. His story was full of holes, and she'd had nothing to do with them. And then along comes Russ, and he's like, I'll accept that scenario, I'll push the hoax. And he's done so ever since. Let's say every time someone finds a hole in a story, he creates an even bigger lie to try and keep it going. Now, here's the entrance to the field. It's on an angle as well. There's a reason that mirror's there today, because it's a blind angle. So a truck would need to go into that field from the left here, and when it came out the same way, it would need to go to the right, because it certainly couldn't go that way. But of course, you can just about get a tractor and trailer through there, and it's the only entrance into the field. And if I'll just go over to this little gate. More cars coming. So a flatbed truck came through that narrow entrance there. This gate wouldn't have been there then. Up there, and then turn sharp right into the field, and then down that slope. If you do a left there, I'll zoom in there so you can see it. There's a bridge over the railway cutting there, go straight into that farm. So this was pretty much like driving a lorry and having a load of soldiers quite literally going through someone's backyard, and the people here didn't see a thing. And the reason they didn't see a thing is because it never happened. So we'll go back down again to the road here. Come a little bit further. I'm letting the camera roll because times like this I don't really want to cut the film too much. Stand there, let this lorry past. You can get an idea of a modern lorry. Look at that. It's down to one lane going across the bridge. But seemingly that wasn't a problem blocking the road like that. That lorry there, had it turned into Llandrillo, would have pretty much blocked the entire road. And why would you have a flatbed truck handy and ready to recover a crashed flying saucer within seconds of it crashing, that is, if you didn't know what size it was or what pieces of size material was going to be it was going to be broken up into. Right, that's one of the lodge houses as well. That's a separate property. The driveway there goes to Palla Hall when it was more palatial and a private residence. So that was one of the lodge houses and the farm there. This is the railway cutting. Just through the trees there is the little bridge over into the farmyard over there. That's a holiday home place now. And we go this side, path down onto the railway embankment. Some old railway buildings there, and that snakes its way then to Llandrillo, Cunwood and onto Corwen. But we'll go a bit further as well. There's the Bryn Terrain pub there, where all the locals used to go for a drink. So we were up and down this road, but didn't see anything. Palla Hall is a private hotel now. So this route in isn't used now. This is a private house. You can just see a bit of Palla Hall there through the trees. Yeah. So everything about this claim stinks. Anyone with half a brain could see it was a hoax. All this except it seems one person. Well, actually he does know it's a hoax. He's just keeping it going because he needs it to be true. Incidentally, when Pat Evans made her offer of assistance to North Wales Police, it was unwanted, of course. They didn't even tell her where to go. It was just a PR exercise to say, yeah, we'll accept your help. And then they didn't tell her where to go. But she came up in the village, over the bridge, up here, and turned right here. And eventually would be on the Llangunnog Road, which is the B4391 over the Berwyns. And that's when she stumbled upon the UFO. I've just realised possibly even a sixth roadblock. I forgot about that little lane going up there. Yeah, he would have needed 1, 2, 3, 4, yeah, no it is 5. Yeah, 5 roadblocks he would have needed to secure this area. Astonishing. I just thought I'd capture this particular scene. Down in the valley there, below those conifers, is Llandrillo, and that woodland there, the conifer plantation, is Cefn Penlletti, which is the wooded hillside directly above the village. And if I zoom in there, you can see that path line through the trees. That's a little bit up in the woodlands, and just out of sight I might get a better shot a little bit later on, but where the woodland goes out of sight there, zoom in there, you can see the path going up onto Berwyn. That's the path that Hugh Lloyd took with the police in his the family's commandeered Land Rover. Now that land there, those green fields, are the fields that were searched in a circular motion by the Land Rover. It went from the gate, which is, I'll zoom in there, where are we? There's the path there, there's a gate over there that leads onto the open mountain, and there's a rough track which swings to the left there, around the back of those green fields, onto the moorland, and then swings round again to the right. In the mist there is the summit of Berwyn, and the little valley going up to that coombe there is called Llandrillo. The stream coming out of it's called Llandrillo as well. And just there is the tip of a little isolated plantation halfway up the mountain called Llandrillo itself. And that's quite an interesting view. All the UFO activity was over that way. It's out of sight at the moment. That summit line there is part of Cefn Coch, which was the view from Garth, which is down there below me. And when Mike Saville and the neighbours from Caipant farm have just passed on this lane, viewed the light in the sky, it sank, and they thought in the dark it was going into the ground, but in fact it disappeared behind that ridge line. And it was quite a simple operation to get the lines of sight from Garth, get the height of the ridge line there, the lowest, just to the right, and then you can determine at what altitude the UFO definitely wasn't sat on. Just out of sight. So it sank below the height of that hill, and that hill was X height. The UFO couldn't have been any higher than that on the side of to the right of this hill, to the left of this hill. It had to have been behind the hill. So that gave a corridor with two lines of sight, two parameters, and somewhere in that corridor lay the Berwyn UFO when it came down and landed for a while. Incidentally, as I mentioned, Llandrillo's down in the village in the valley there. The village is down there, and there's two cottages there. You can see them quite easily from the road between Llandrillo and Llandrillo. They're above the road, and there's 3 miles of road between there and the village of Llandrillo, which is down there somewhere, out of sight. And when the idea was trying to be fed to Margaret Fry from late 1996, early 1997 onwards, about a UFO, the Berwyn UFO up on the mountain there, was moved by this clown John Williams to a roadside crash and recovery outside the village there. When she rejected it and Russ Kellett came on the scene in 1999, John Williams fed him a totally different story. And what was actually bizarre about this was that Russ Kellett knew from his communication with Margaret Fry that there had been a previous version. And despite knowing that John Williams gave that previous version to Margaret Fry, the version he got had moved the crash to Llandrillo down there, and then it became 2 UFOs to account for the one that was still up on the mountain. When Margaret Fry was fed the story, there was only ever 1 UFO. Then it morphed to 2, and with embellishments over the years, each time Russ Kellett's encountered with something, he seemingly happens to invent a new flying saucer or something, or a cylinder. He's never quite made up his mind which. The story's changed multiple times. He totally ignored the change of venue from Llandrillo to Llandrillo. He totally ignored the change of information that was given to Margaret Fry. He's written her out of the story entirely, like she never existed, and this is wholly his baby. And as I say, as more and more stuff's come available to counter the ludicrousy of this hoax, and it was a hoax. It was intended to subvert Margaret Fry in the first place, as she was the leading researcher on this particular event in the 90s. So she's been written out of the story, and Russ Kellett has perpetuated the hoax. He knows it's a hoax, he knows the information's changed, and I'm here today, as I've mentioned, that he's just produced a book which I've read, and as well as the fact that it's actually written by a 5-year-old, full of spelling mistakes, inaccuracies, appalling grammar. He's realised that the UFO crash site outside Llandrillo, which was fed to him by John Williams, is totally untenable. It's impossible, actually. So to keep it going, he's actually moved the location to another field on the other side of a road leading up to the village, just so he can maintain it. And now the flatbed recovery of the UFO in the field he was promoting for 20 years has now moved to the flatbed being on the side of a road, and the UFO was lifted or flown over the roadside hedge onto the back of the truck, just to accommodate for the fact that it was impossible for a recovery operation as described to have taken place in the field he's been promoting, and actually made a DVD of, called Dragon Lights, for the last 20 years. Of course, in his book there's no mention of Dragon Lights, and he's erased all the people who would know anything about that story as well. So make of that what you will. Right, what I have here, ladies and gents, I brought it out with me, is my little Kindle, and downloaded onto that Kindle is Russ Kellett's latest book on the hoax he keeps pushing. He's tried to be user friendly, giving it a bit of a bilingual title in places, but that alters nothing about the huge number of spelling mistakes, grammatical errors, and other problems with what he's actually written. However, I'm just going to open up the book, and the reason I've come to this spot now is because, so you'll find the pages, it is. I'll try and get the glare off this if I can. No, it's not working very well. But that there is a image of Russ Kellett, and that image has been circulating for some time, and he is standing in a field pointing to what he claims is the field where the UFO crashed at Llandrillo. Of course, since then, in this book, actually, he's changed the venue of that. But what's interesting about this particular thing is he seems to be trying to trick people who look at the picture into believing that the UFO field that he's banged on about for the last 20 years is actually just below him, and it's not. I've tracked them down to the exact spot where they took this picture, and the UFO field is 1.6, maybe 1.7 miles as the crow flies from this spot. It's nowhere near the spot, but I noticed that lately he's been changing names and misidentifying their locations, trying to hide, it seems to me, the ability for people to go and visit these places and check out what he's actually claiming, because virtually everything he's claiming is just simply not true. So I'm going to place the, you can see, I don't know if you can see it, there's a little hawthorn tree just there by Russ's face there, and I will put some stills in this clip, which is much better than this video clip of his image on the Kindle. But behind him are some branches there, and that branch there is that ash tree, and there is the hawthorn bush, which are either side of his head there. And if you look closely at the stills, you'll see quite easily that he stood. In fact, I'll try and get the exact spot, because he stood up on this bank here somewhere. Now, I don't know if I'll be able to do this. There'll have to be a bit of a selfie, I think. But if I that's it better. So we're turning these Kindles round. Sometimes the pictures move. Apologies for my face on this, but I'm now looking at. There we go. We need a few more branches in there. Whoops, a bit unstable here. And also, I've just got to get my. In fact, if I lower myself down here, it might be a bit better. Yeah, there's the hawthorn tree. Behind me, the branches off this ash tree, and also in the image you can just make out some stones on the dry stone wall across the track here. But anyway, this is exactly where he stood. Now, I've also managed to match up not only the that hawthorn tree there. I'm looking straight at it now. He's actually pointing down there, and he's also, there's a telegraph pole there, which is he seems to have deliberately kept out of the image. Again, it's a determining factor. But what he didn't manage to avoid is there's the hawthorn tree, and in the background, the bottom of the field here, there's some distinctive trees which have barely changed since this original picture was taken. They're there, but crucially behind them is the scenery. I'll just try and get down here. I'm not gonna edit this because it's quite important. Stood up on the wall here somewhere. I'll climb up here myself. Look at it. Yeah. Ooh. He's there's a spot up here. It's a bit unstable, this bank. I'm just trying to get right, here we go. There's the ash tree, there's the hawthorn tree, but crucially also in his image is that scene at the back. You've got, I'll zoom out a bit, you've got that woodland there on the hill slope. I'll zoom in there, that one. Move across. Here, that bit of woodlands and a bit of bracken amongst it, and a bit of gorse. And that one there with a little farm below it. That scene is in that image on his book. He was stood on this wall with that hawthorn bush and that tree and a little bit of dry stone wall behind them, giving away the view down the field there. And he's claiming there that he's looking over the UFO field. Well, I can tell you now, the UFO field, as I said, 1.6, maybe 1.7 miles away. I measured it on magic maps and Google Earth, and there's about a tenth of a mile difference away. You can't even see Llandrillo down here. Yet he's claiming a flying saucer or a cylinder, whatever he wants, crashed and was recovered right in front of an entire village, and nobody noticed. And of course, he moved the village 3 miles down the road from Llandrillo to Llandrillo, or rather, the guy feeding them the hoax did, and he just swallowed it. Just coming up into view here, there's a bit of a mist. The mist is turning there. That telegraph pole there. There's the summit of Berwyn. The background there. Yeah, summit of Berwyn there. And if I swing round the top of the forestry there, behind those trees there, so yeah, there's the summit of Berwyn, lost in the mist there. Several miles between them. Time for a brew. So I thought I'd have a little tea break here and a biscuit, and celebrate exposing another piece of dishonesty by Russ, namely that the UFO field is just here. He's pointing to the UFO field in the picture, but in fact, if I just turn that up there, you can see the it's quite gloomy today actually. It's very cloudy and there's a few spots of rain coming down now, but so the lighting's not good at all, but there's your ash tree on the roadside, and the hawthorn tree in the field just over the hedge, over the fence, sorry. So I'd like to know how Russ can explain away that he's over 1.5 miles from his acclaimed fake UFO site, and he's pointing to a field presumably just not so many yards away where this UFO was. You know, absolute rot, and it's just one of dozens of attempts he's made to cover up the fact that this is a hoax. He knows it's a hoax, but he's just latched onto it for all these years, and instead of just accepting the information like every normal person does, he rejects everything and then pretty much invents stuff to plug the gaps. So cheers, Russ. Just before I clear off, I'll just have a quick one last pan round. That farmhouse over there, it's called Havoti Wen. There's a signpost there. If anyone wants to come up here, just follow the road out from Llandrillo, turn up past Llandrillo, and just follow the road up past Caipant and come to a dead end here. That's a bridleway there to the left. So it's the end of the tarmac road there. I mean, it took me, I saw that picture, it took me not even 30 minutes to pin down this spot. It's all a matter of landscape interpretation. Something Russ seems very short an experience of. And when he tells me that a flying saucer or a cylinder or a blob or whatever he wants crashed in a field where it's impossible for it to go into and impossible for those claims, you can rest assured that I'm right. No one's perfect, but it's just unreal what Russ claims. As I say, his story is so full of holes. There's more holes in it than sieve. So that's just unfortunate. He's latched onto it, of course. It's his baby, and he's made it his life. But you just can't go around deceiving people like this. It's just unreal. So if you're gonna do this sort of thing, I think you need to tell the truth as best you understand it. And this has nothing to do with truth, especially when he knows that the story was fed to somebody else, researcher Margaret Fry, before he ever came on the scene, at a totally different village, Llandrillo. And of course, another little nugget there, John Williams, J.W. Conway as he calls him. He's changed his name in his book to Llewellyn, by the way, and he's changed the guy's wife's name to Sue. John Williams, J.W. Conway, also tried to get a company called Valley Stream Studios in Conway to make a film out of it and push the hoax before Kellett ever came on the scene. So he knows that and all. So there's two examples of a previous example of the hoax being pushed, which he's erased in favour of an updated version, which he knows simply can't be true because the venue changed. And the only way he's trying to get around it is by creating circumstances where he's introduced multiple UFOs to try and cover up the differences. But the original story only ever contained one UFO, the Berwyn UFO, which John Williams claimed was crashed at the side of the road in Llandrillo instead of 4 miles from the village up on the mountain. That mountain there. A car just coming out of that Havoti Wen. Tourist, I think it's a holiday home at the moment. Right, I'm off for now. See you anon.